Hey, it's Adam here, your internet chess coach. In today's video, we're going to look at and analyze some of Hikaru's games versus a FIDE master, Gabriel Arteaga, on chess.com. The goal is to understand how Hikaru is able to consistently win games against 2800, 2900 rated opponents so that you can also try and do the same as well. Okay, game number one, Gravity Chess is a FIDE master. He has the white pieces. Hikaru has black. As we go through the game, I'll comment. We'll play at the speed that the game was played after. We'll analyze. Hikaru goes for his typical G6 setups, as we've seen in our other videos. White already taking some time to think. Is he going to play? Okay, he goes for this setup. Hikaru wants to trade light squared bishops. This already, I think, is quite favorable for black, as the light squares around the white king are going to be a bit weak. As we go along, try to keep up, try to anticipate the moves. It's going to improve your chess ability and understanding. You're also welcome to do your own analysis of this game, and I encourage it to see how certain moves affect the engine evaluation. White is grabbing some space on the queen side, but his king is really unsafe. And as we've seen before, how important it is to get your king safe. Many times, surprisingly, opponents of this caliber still have their king a bit weak. Okay, so black is down in exchange here, but the light squares are extremely weak in white's position. White also cannot castle. I'm expecting a move like f5, f4 by Hikaru. He goes g5. That's a very interesting move, controlling the f4 square further. If e4, he goes h6, protecting the pawn on g5. The knight on a5 here is sidelined a bit, but it's actually very strong hitting the c4 pawn. I think that might be a big problem for white in the future. Pawn to f5 is a very natural move next. I'm expecting, okay, yeah, pawn to f5, f3. Let's bishop g2. That's a nasty move, hitting the rook, and unfortunately, white has to give back material. I think Hikaru might even just take the pawn here. I'd be surprised, but let's see. Yeah, he does take the pawn here. He can now he takes again. So material is equal now, and the white king is really unsafe. With this move, another pawn hangs. He could take and play bishop f5 after the knight takes. I don't think he will, though. I think he's going to go knight g6 here. Rook f4, sacking another piece to open up lines. Okay, rook f8. Coming back makes sense. Maybe queen c8. Hikaru is just attacking, opening up lines on the king side. White's not taking the rook, which would open up the dark squared bishop. White's also down on time, and he's trying to find a plan here. He doesn't have any good pawn breaks. If he takes on h5, the bishop can take back, or Hikaru can play g4 as well. I think black's queen on a8 does need to get in the game, so move like queen c8, hitting the h3 pawn after the g4 pawn takes on h5. Okay, white's really getting low on time here. He finds knight g3. Hikaru takes. Pawn on e should take. Oh, Hikaru takes the g pawn. Okay. So he has a wall of passed pawns going down the board. He has 3 connected passed pawns, e5, f4, g3. I keep wanting queen c8 to be played here. Hikaru is playing knight f5, knight e3 with a fork. He can take the rook. I think now is the time to take the rook. You can also take... Actually, no, you can't take on c4. What is he thinking? Hikaru is trying to find the win here. Maybe queen f8, queen f5 makes sense. Then queen f3. Maybe queen c8, queen f5. Wow, he goes for this. Ah, okay, because he sees queen takes d5 is coming if rook takes. Okay, he has a ton of pawns here compared to white, so in terms of material, um, black has more than enough compensation for the loss of two rooks. He has two very strong knights and a few extra pawns. In this position, white just resigned the game. Okay, what a game. Let's head to our analysis and analyze. Let's take a look at the analysis of this game and understand some of the key ideas. The evaluation bar is also it's on the side there if you want to take a look at it. White goes c4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7. Hikaru always can play these setups with g6, bishop g7. It's an easy system for black in blitz matches. Bishop g2, d6, e3, bishop d7, and queen c8. Trying to trade off this light scored bishop. White could play like a move like h3 and g4, stopping this plan. Excuse me. It goes for rook b1, pawn to e5, knight to e2, bishop h3, bishop f3, knight e7, pawn b4, castles, pawn b5. The engine really thinks black has a nice position here. It's giving black a slight edge, and the problem is the king simply cannot castle. A move like knight g1 even, bishop g2, h3 comes to mind. Queen to a4, b6, Hikaru gives away the exchange, and this diagonal is wide open, so white immediately closes it down. Pawn g5 isn't the best move according to the engine here. Queen c8 is a better move, trying to go for queen g4, queen f3. Hikaru plays g5 here, so I want to understand why exactly was he not improving the queen immediately, and why does he go for g5? I think he's looking for a structure in which white is unable to prevent black from continuous domination. Maybe he was also provoking white into playing a move like f3, which happened later in the game, and white lost this important f3 pawn. It's also possible g5, maybe he was trying to stop this move f4 and evaluated this as much more favorable for black. In this case, you could take with the e pawn, opening up the e file, and after takes, if knight takes, then bishop takes check, and if pawn takes, knight to f5, and black is getting a lot of activity with the rook on the e file. The queen can also come to d8 and h4. Pawn g5, pawn to e4, h6, bishop e3, f5, pawn to f3, bishop g2. So it's clear why black is better here. Even though he's down in exchange, white's king is stuck in the center, and black is about to win either the exchange back or the f3 pawn. And this f3 pawns might turn out to be very useful, as we saw extremely useful. Black got some pawns of his own rolling down the board. King d2. Hikaru doesn't take the rook, which is okay, by the way, but he wants more. He wants to realize his pawn advantage, and taking the pawn makes a lot of sense here. He'll only be down 1 point, plus white's position is very, very soft. The queen always has to defend the c4 pawn. Queen can come to e8 and queen h5 now that I look at it further. Takes. Black has a nice advantage. He could have taken the pawn on g4 here, but he didn't want to maybe trade off a pair of rooks or allow this knight to come to e4. There's also this tactic of knight e5 now, which looks very strong for black. Okay, Hikaru plays rook to f4, and the idea of rook f4 is hoping that if you take, I thought, yeah, take with this pawn, opening up the dark squared bishop, and playing for e3, bishop takes g4. The material would even be equal in that position, but a huge advantage for black. White correctly does not take the rook. Black plays h5, trying to open up the king side further. Knight to g3, takes. And here I was very surprised that Hikaru didn't take back with the most natural move. E takes f4, opening up the diagonal for the bishop, which the engine actually agrees. Let's see what the evaluation is the other way. The bar drops a bit, but Hikaru has these massive pawns going down the board. So he'd rather take with this pawn, undoubling his pawns to get this structure, rather than open up his dark squared bishop. Both are good, but opening up the bishop is better in this case, and if white ever takes, then the pawns are undoubled anyways. Pawn takes, knight takes, bishop takes, knight takes, g3, rook to c1, knight to f5, and the position is actually roughly equal here. Black has a slight advantage, and I was commenting that the move queen c8 should be played here, which is the best line according to the engine. But what I didn't see, and this is what Hikaru noticed, is that the pawn on d5 is actually quite weak, and there's this sacrifice on d5 that's possible. And I also find it interesting white is preparing for the sacrifice as well. If black takes, it is a check, but the c pawn will be weak at the end. So that's why rook c1 was played here. Knight to f5, knight to e3, and Hikaru again finds this tactic, winning another pawn and the game, and his opponent simply resigned in this position. You could try knight takes g3, but after pawn takes, this is completely over. Bishop can come to h6, pawn's coming to g2, and white is completely paralyzed. All right, let's head to our analysis of this game. Game number 1 for today, Hikaru with the black pieces. Gravity chess versus Hikaru. And the opening was in English, and Hikaru plays g6, bishop g7, and bishop d7, and queen c8 setups. Main reason for the win, the light squares in white's territory were prominently weak, and black managed to get a mass number of pawns in the center. Hikaru sacrificed material to get an enormous pawn chain, and found the tactical blow at the end with knight takes d5. Main reason for loss, white's king was never safe. White lacked any activity with his extra material, and couldn't open up lines. Favorably. Okay, notes. I found this game interesting. It demonstrated how powerful a bishop and a pawn can be compared to a rook. Also, I was surprised that Hikaru didn't bring his queen to c8, but what I missed was this knight takes d5 but he had some future intention with knight takes d5 and queen takes d5. That's why the queen was staying in the corner to keep this tactic available.